Just wore right out.
There's some major damage done to the pulley on the drive motor on this thing, so it's just worn out and it just crumbled, fell to pieces. It's the pulley that the drive belt sits on, which runs the whole thing, so it's gone.
In Gold Rush, Season 16, Episode 17, a gold battle erupts that nobody saw coming. Parker Schnabel was certain Dominion Creek was locked down. The ground had already been mapped, claimed, and secured, with nearly $175 million in proven gold believed to be sitting beneath the surface. For Parker, it looked like another season of controlled expansion, but overnight, the situation took a shocking turn. Rick Ness suddenly released footage showing massive cleanouts coming from ground. Parker insists belongs to him. The pay layer looks almost identical. The color of the gold matches. Even the gravel composition lines up perfectly with Parker's own survey reports. Within hours, the internet exploded with one question. Did Rick Ness outmaneuver Parker? Or is he mining gold that was never his to begin with? What was supposed to be a routine mining season has now erupted into one of the biggest rivalries the Yukon has ever seen. And this time, the stakes feel personal. Before we dig deeper into this unbelievable story, if you enjoy the real drama behind Gold Rush, the rivalries, the betrayals, and the massive fortunes buried beneath Yukon soil, make sure you hit like and subscribe, because what happens next might completely change everything Parker thought he controlled. The news surfaced overnight. Dominion Creek, Parker's prized claim and the foundation of the empire he built, had suddenly been re-registered, not under Discovery's name, not under Parker's company, but under an entirely different operator. By sunrise, Parker's crew pulled into camp and were met with something they never expected. Access-restricted signs hammered into the dirt, bright red claim stakes lining the perimeter, and stamped clearly on every single marker were the same words: Rick Ness Limited. Yes, that Rick Ness, the one who disappeared from the Yukon 2 years earlier. At first, the crew assumed it had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe a prank, maybe a filing error buried in paperwork. But when Parker's legal team checked the documents, the reality hit hard. The claim transfer had been approved, the signatures were verified, and Dominion Creek was no longer in Parker's hands. The news spread through Dawson City faster than wildfire. Some locals said Rick had somehow bought the claim while Parker was away filming in Fairbanks. Others believed it was payback years in the making, but for Parker, it felt like something deeper than a business move. It felt like betrayal. When he finally returned to camp, the truth was impossible to ignore. The machinery was silent. Security fencing surrounded the pay dirt, and the only sound left was the creek running through land that no longer belonged to him. This wasn't a clerical error. It was a full takeover. For the next 2 days, Rick Ness was nowhere to be seen. No statements, no interviews, no social media posts, just silence. But in the Yukon, silence usually means something big is about to happen. Soon, rumors began circulating. Late-night convoys hauling dozers and excavators north, covered in tarps. No company logos, no Discovery camera crews. People at the local fuel station even claimed they spotted Rick himself driving one of the lowboy trucks, with his old black pickup trailing close behind. He wasn't returning for a conversation. He was coming back to mine. Then the puzzle pieces started snapping together. Rick had quietly been purchasing smaller leases, leftover plots Parker's crew once used as staging areas along their haul road. At first glance, those parcels seemed worthless. But when someone overlaid the new map coordinates, they formed a straight corridor leading directly into Dominion Creek's richest pay zone. Then came the leak that shocked everyone. A permit surfaced showing drilling coordinates almost identical to the underground gold channel Parker's team spent 3 entire seasons mapping. Rick wasn't guessing where to dig. He was targeting the exact heart of Parker's discovery. But one question burned hotter than any rumor. Who was backing Rick? Because pulling off a move like this takes serious money, and a lot of it. The answer came quickly, and it hit like dynamite. Documents revealed Rick's new operation was being financed by a private equity firm from Alberta, a group known for aggressive mining takeovers, the same investors who, just a year earlier, tried to purchase Dominion Creek directly from Parker's company, and were firmly rejected. Now they were back. Only this time, instead of negotiating with Parker, they were standing beside Rick Ness. They supplied everything: fuel contracts, heavy equipment, wash plants, loaders, even legal protection. In return, they wanted full access to Dominion's massive gold reserves. Rick agreed, but with one condition: complete operational control of the mine. The investors accepted. This wasn't about rebuilding Rick's reputation. It wasn't about a fresh start or a comeback story. Rick Ness had returned for something much more personal. He didn't just want gold. He wanted Parker's ground, Parker's maps, Parker's discovery, Parker's legacy. Because now it was clear. Rick wasn't just mining gold. He was mining revenge. And the first target of that revenge was Dominion Creek. For Parker, Dominion wasn't just another claim. It was the foundation of his entire empire. The site held an estimated $175 million in projected reserves, every ounce already mapped into future mining plans. That single property supported everything: new wash plants, major fuel contracts, and expansion leases further up the valley. So, when Rick pushed into Dominion's boundary lines, it wasn't simply a challenge over land. It was a direct strike against Parker's entire operation. The consequences appeared almost immediately. Fuel suppliers began hesitating. Trucking schedules stalled. Even the production crews behind Gold Rush temporarily paused filming. What once looked like an unstoppable empire was suddenly standing on shaky ground. Within days, the pressure intensified. Accountants started calling for clarification. Investors demanded financial reviews. By the end of the week, network executives from Discovery Channel sent a blunt message: pause filming until the situation is resolved. Everyone behind the cameras knew exactly what that meant. For Parker, the Yukon mining season had shifted from production mode to survival mode. Sitting alone in the quiet office trailer, Parker stared at Dominion's financial projections flickering across his computer screen. Then he muttered quietly to the cameras still recording: "Someone's playing chess, and I'm still on the first move." Meanwhile, just a few miles away, Rick Ness finally broke the silence. He uploaded a single video online. No explanation, no caption, no words at all. The clip showed only one thing: the thunderous roar of his wash plant, and a close-up shot of bright Yukon gold spilling across the sluice mat. Within hours, the footage exploded across mining forums and social media. And suddenly, the gold war in the Yukon had officially begun. Season 16, Episode 17, the gold Rick pulled up had the exact same color, texture, and purity as the samples Parker Schnabel once showed from Dominion Creek, almost like looking at the same gold twice. Within just 48 hours, mining analysts from Dawson all the way to Anchorage began piecing things together. The pay layer visible in Rick Ness's footage perfectly matched the geological seam Parker had mapped 3 years earlier. This wasn't some random coincidence. It was the same ground, the same ancient river channel, only mined from the opposite side of the claim boundary. But Rick wasn't presenting it as Parker's discovery. On camera, he calmly claimed it as his own, holding wet gold in his hand and saying he'd promised everyone he'd return, and now he was finally running his own ground. He never said the word Dominion, yet everyone understood exactly what he meant. Back at Parker's camp, tensions exploded. Some crew members wanted to drive straight to the boundary and block Rick's haul trucks, while others urged Parker to release his survey maps publicly to prove the ground was his first. But Parker knew how these battles usually ended. Once lawyers got involved, every machine stopped and every lost hour meant lost gold. Meanwhile, the internet lit up with speculation. Mining forums, blogs, and industry sites all debated the same question. Was Rick trespassing, or had he legally outmaneuvered Parker? Because if Rick's permits were truly valid, Parker might actually be the one standing on the wrong side of the law. And in the Yukon, whoever holds the official claim paperwork controls the ground. By the end of the week, the dispute exploded into a legal war. Parker's lawyers filed an emergency injunction in Whitehorse, accusing Rick of fraudulent filings, stolen geological data, and illegal access to proprietary surveys. Rick's team fired back immediately with government-stamped claim deeds that looked legitimate on paper. But they had been filed only days before Dominion's final renewal deadline, raising serious questions about how they moved through the system so quickly. Then, a shocking email arrived. A whistleblower from inside the mining office told Parker that someone had bribed an official to fast-track Rick's registration, attaching internal timestamps that hinted the documents were pushed through the system unusually fast, enough to raise suspicion, but not enough to prove corruption in court. If confirmed, the evidence could destroy Rick's position, but if leaked too soon, it could also damage Parker's case. At the same time, Discovery held back the footage, refusing to air new material while the legal fight unfolded, knowing a lawsuit could shut down the entire production. So, while Rick's excavators kept chewing through the outer edge of Dominion Creek, Parker was stuck drowning in paperwork, watching potential gold disappear ounce by ounce as lawyers debated ownership of the ground beneath their feet. Every hour mattered. Fuel contracts were nearing expiration, heavy haul equipment leases were coming due, and morale at camp dropped into silence. What began as a simple claim dispute had turned into a full corporate battle where every decision Parker made carried seven-figure consequences. One evening, he sat alone in his truck overlooking Dominion Creek, the same valley he once believed he would control for life, watching Rick's floodlights glow through the fog on the other side of the river, as engines roared and wash plants hummed, sending gold steadily through someone else's hands. No camera crew needed to explain what was happening. Dominion wasn't just under pressure, it was slowly slipping away. Each day the legal fight dragged on. Rick Ness dug deeper, cutting not only into the pay dirt, but into the empire Parker had built. And then came a blow no one expected, not from the ground, but from the internet. The first sign appeared on Reddit, when an anonymous user claimed to possess Dominion Creek's full geological dataset. Within hours, the files spread across mining forums and Discord channels. When Parker's team downloaded them, the reality hit hard. It was all real. Every 3D terrain scan, every drill log, every projected yield, even heat maps showing the richest gold zones had been leaked for the entire world to see. Dominion hadn't just been challenged legally. Its secrets were now spilling into the public domain. Parker's office immediately locked everything down. Computers were taken offline, hard drives inspected, and security footage reviewed. Within 20 minutes, they found the source. The metadata pointed to an account belonging to someone Parker once trusted, his former senior surveyor, who was now working with Rick Ness. Parker drove straight to the claim boundary. Cameras silently followed as he stopped near the Dominion access road. Rick was already there beside a loader, arms crossed, diesel fumes thick in the air. Parker stepped forward and said quietly that Rick had leaked his data. Rick didn't react. Instead, he replied coldly that Parker had abandoned that data the moment he lost the claim, and the words landed harder than any shout. Rick turned away toward his wash plant, leaving Parker alone in the mud as the tension hung in the cold air. Within hours, the moment exploded online, spreading across social media and mining forums. The internet quickly split into two sides. One group claiming Rick had simply played the game by the rules, the other insisting it was nothing less than calculated theft. But by that point, the argument hardly mattered. The real damage had already been done. Parker's confidential maps were no longer private. Suddenly, every miner in the Yukon Valley knew exactly where Dominion Creek's richest gold layers were buried. Only days later, Rick struck big, really big. His crew pulled off a cleanout so massive it shattered Yukon chatter records, recovering more than 1,200 ounces in just a single week. Videos flooded the internet, showing gleaming gold bars stacked nearly waist-high under the glare of floodlights. Rick's investors celebrated openly, posting photos with captions bragging that Dominion delivers. For Parker, the timing couldn't have been worse. His own sponsors began hesitating. Fuel companies slowed shipments, pointing to the uncertainty surrounding the operation. Equipment providers postponed contract renewals. Even Discovery quietly started trimming its field production budget. Behind the scenes, the foundation of Parker's entire operation was starting to shake. Inside the crew quarters, the mood grew heavy and quiet. Men who had worked with Parker for years started considering other options. A few admitted privately they had already been contacted by Rick's new team, offering higher pay, less risk, and a clean start. By the end of the week, Parker's roster had shrunk. The camp had grown quieter, and Parker himself spoke softer than anyone had ever heard. There was no shouting this time, no anger, no blame. One night he simply stared into the campfire and quietly told Mitch, "He's not mining gold, he's mining me." Still, Parker wasn't finished. He went back through Dominion's older survey archives, digging through maps drawn long before the major operations began. Maps showing underground drift tunnels carved decades earlier by previous miners. Those nearly forgotten records revealed something nobody had checked in years: a buried subchannel running beneath the current creek bed, leading straight under the ground Rick had recently claimed. Parker quietly gathered a small skeleton crew, just enough people to keep things discreet. Late one night, they loaded drones and ground scanning equipment into a pickup and drove along a remote back trail, far outside the reach of Rick's security lights. The wind whipped through the trees as drone lights cut through the fog while they descended into one of the old collapsed tunnels. The signal flickered for a moment before stabilizing, and then the camera revealed it. A sealed drift tunnel with timber supports still standing, stretching directly beneath Rick's wash plant. Dust coated the beams, untouched for decades. As the drone slowly scanned the ground, everyone inside the truck leaned closer to the screen. Small glints shimmered faintly in the dirt. Gold-bearing gravel identical to Dominion's historic core samples. And beyond that, half buried beneath layers of sediment, were Parker's old survey marker tags, still nailed to the tunnel supports. It wasn't just a clue, it was the missing piece. Clear evidence that Rick's new discovery sat directly above the same underground channel Parker had mapped 3 years earlier. The depth, slope, and geological pattern all lined up perfectly with Dominion's private data. Suddenly, everything made sense. Rick's record-breaking week hadn't been luck at all. It was the exact pay layer Parker had originally discovered and planned to mine himself. The gold at Dominion had never truly changed owners, only the paperwork had. But that realization brought another problem. Every bit of footage and data they had captured came from beneath land now legally claimed by Rick. If Parker revealed it publicly, he'd be the one accused of trespassing. The proof that could expose Rick might also destroy Parker's own case. Sitting behind the wheel with the tablet glowing in his hands, Parker stared at the drone's live feed. His markers, his surveys, his gold now buried under someone else's claim. Outside in the darkness, Rick's wash plant roared steadily, chewing through pay dirt just a few hundred meters away. Each rumble of machinery echoed across the valley like a taunt. That tunnel changed everything for Parker, not just because it confirmed what Rick had done, but because it gave Parker a secret weapon of his own, a secret powerful enough to destroy Rick's operation. If Parker was willing to risk destroying himself as well. He didn't act immediately. Days passed while that footage lingered in his thoughts, until one evening his phone lit up with a number he didn't recognize. There was no message and no caller ID, only a location and a time. A small diner outside Dawson, 1 hour from now, no cameras, no crew. When Parker walked inside, the man waiting for him wasn't a stranger. He was one of Rick's investors, part of the Alberta group that had financed the takeover. The man looked nervous, glancing repeatedly toward the door before sliding a flash drive across the table. "You didn't get this from me," he whispered, "but they're planning to cut him out." According to him, Rick Ness would be gone the moment the season ended. The files on the drive filled in the rest: internal memos, investor briefings, and financial projections outlining a plan to remove Rick entirely once Dominion Creek was secured. The investors intended to fold the operation into their corporate portfolio, sell off equipment, and replace Rick with a salaried manager. In other words, Rick wasn't the owner of anything. He was just the public face of the deal until the acquisition became permanent. The real plan was total corporate control, quiet, calculated, and irreversible. For the first time in weeks, Parker Schnabel saw a path back into the game. Dominion had turned into a chessboard, and he finally had a move. Instead of machines, he built his counterattack with lawyers, accountants, and one quiet call to a private partner. If the Alberta investors could gain Dominion through Rick Ness, Parker could take it back through them. Within days, a shell company offered to buy a minority stake in their investment group, profitable, discreet, and wrapped in legal layers that kept Parker's name hidden. The investors accepted, never realizing who was behind the deal. While Rick filmed celebratory clips about his record-breaking gold haul, Parker was quietly buying into the very company funding Rick's operation. Dominion wasn't being reclaimed with bulldozers. It was happening through contracts and signatures. Weeks later, the cracks appeared. Fuel shipments slowed, parts deliveries stalled, and investors stopped answering Rick's calls. Then, everything suddenly froze. Back at Dominion Creek, Parker's crew finished the final cleanout under a gray Yukon sky. The sluices ran steady, gold shining beneath the work lights as the totals confirmed it. Dominion was once again the richest active site in the region. But Parker didn't celebrate for long. Standing above the pit, he looked down at the ground where the battle had begun and quietly told Mitch, he'll be back. The wind carried the faint rumble of engines beyond the tree line. Because in the Klondike, nothing stays buried forever, especially gold or grudges.